Dibble. Harriet and I were in Synanon together. I have to take you back to the early and mid-60s when staying clean from drugs was newsworthy. It was newsworthy because it was so rare. Synanon was a breakthrough in this area. And I was and am a beneficiary of that breakthrough. Synanon, of course, was a descendant of Alcoholics and Narcotics Anonymous. And one of their central ideas is that there is a therapeutic value in one addict helping another. Synanon had that, but it had a difference. It was a 24-hour-a-day live-in community. By the way, they're now called therapeutic communities. And it was healthy, and it was healing, and it was moral, and it was good for people. It was good for me. It was great stuff. It was so healthy and positive that it had its own magnetism. It appealed to people who didn't have any problem with drugs, non-addicts. At the time, they were called squares. Now they're called newbies or civilians or something like that. But at the time, they were called squares. So they attracted squares. Harold and Harriet were some of the first squares to move into Synanon. And Harriet not only lived in Synanon, but she worked in Synanon. And she ran one of the largest departments there. She was a director of the Santa Monica operation. The headquarters, by the way, are the old Del Mar at Pico and the Beach, now called the Casa Del Mar Hotel. That was the headquarters. Synanon at the time had many properties in Santa Monica, including a warehouse and a large fleet of vehicles. Harriet had responsibility for much of this. But I think that I had to for this talk, by the way. I felt it behooved me to get in touch with people who knew her in Synanon. So I contacted through email and phone about half a dozen people, maybe 7 or 8. And here are some of their comments, which I think disclose Harriet in this context. She was good at any job. She was practical. She was competitive, forceful, yet diplomatic. She was hardworking, but not driven. She was ironic, but not cynical. She was smart, but not pretentious. A little known, well, maybe not so little known, but it was kind of a reminder to me. Harriet was a member of the Synanon Santa Monica Motorcycle Club. And not only did she ride around Santa Monica, but she rode up and down the coast. This is a big bike, and with a helmet and so on and so on. So Harriet had cojones. She was up for anything. You know, I think Harold and Harriet both, when we're talking about Harriet today, I think they found the melting pot of Synanon very attractive and very warming to them. And so I wrote down some of the opposites in Synanon at the time that I think, as I say, had its own gravitational pull. Harriet, you know, Harriet had friends with, here's what I guess I want to say, which was the people I contacted. Her friends were dope fiends and squares, blacks and whites, people from Bel Air, and people from the projects. People from Yale and people from jail. People from New York and people from Sheboygan. Harriet had a great love of irreverent and flamboyant humor, and she seemed to gravitate to the people who produced it. Synanon members and residents treated Harriet's cancer, or breast cancer at the time, with the seriousness that it deserved. But you know, not with maudlin sympathy, nor with kind of an evasive business as usual kind of denial thing. Neither one. It was somewhere in the middle, and it was very human, it was very loving, it was very kind. So Synanon at the time provided her, the community and the group sessions itself, provided her with tremendous emotional nourishment and support when she had cancer. And that happened all the time then. Harriet, I think, had, and I heard this in the phone calls, I said, she had a love of not only of the idea, but the practice of community. And as I understand it, during the various reorganizations of the wellness community, how they were called, she insisted, put her foot down. She says, you must use the word community. And, you know, the thing that I thought about when I was doing the research for this talk was that this idea of community came up, and later the wellness community and so on. I believe, you know, that those early days of Synanon and so on, what attracted is there's something ancient and there's something universal about community, about our need for each other. And Harriet, I think, also spotted that we resisted against our self-interest. But, you know, we back away, we stay alienated. And yet people as people and their interaction with them and their love of them is precisely what we need. So I believe it is baked into the human cake, the whole need for community and people. Harriet put more into Synanon than she took out of it. And from what I know of her and from what I've learned, that's entirely consistent with everything she did. Thank you. It's been an honor talking today.